Every promise in the book is mine. Every chapter, every verse, and every line, all are blessing of His love divine. Every promise in the book is mine. Gail, say.
Every promise in the book is mine. Every chapter, every verse, every line,
all are blessings of His love divine. Every promise
in the book
thank God. Some of y'all a little confused. Let me explain it. By His stripes, the book says, I'm healed until the day of redemption. The book says, I've been sealed, according to that same book, to prosper and be in health is right in line. Every promise
in the book.
thank God. Somebody lift up your hand and say with the gill, say every promise in the book
Is mine.
think about it. From Genesis all the way down to Revelation, every chapter, every line, they all are blessings of His love divine.
Every promise
Yes, sir.
in the book
Thank God. Here's another promise for the Bible readers that says, delight yourself in the Lord. You can have what's in your heart. Anybody ever read that? Therefore, if any man be in Christ, guess what? He's got a brand new start. I love that part that says this. Knock, and the door shall be open. Seek, and ye shall find. Every promise.
in the book.
Everybody has their favorite promise. This one is mine, and it says, on resurrection morning, when that last trumpet sounds, and all that have died in Christ, they began to rise up from the ground. This applies to us. Then we that remain, we that are still alive will then find out that every promise, I thank God. Somebody stretch out your hand and say with the gill, oh yes, it's mine. Yes, it's mine. Yes, it's mine. Yes, it's mine. They all are blessings of His love divine.
Every promise
Thank you, Lord.
in the book.
Somebody that's standing on God's promises, come on, stretch them out one more time. Say with the gill, say, oh yes, it's mine. Anybody here ever read that part that said, I'll never leave you, nor will I forsake you, but I'll be with you even until the end of the world. Somebody tonight can relate to this. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. I don't know about y'all, but I'm able to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, fearing no evil. something, I was done. Y'all could have stuck a fork in me, I was done. But I began to think about another one that fits me. It says, I once was young, but right now I'm old. Yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed standing around begging for bread. Somebody wave your hand and say that it's mine. Yes, it's mine. If you believe it, lift your hands and say that it's mine. Yes, it's mine. Come on, somebody say, I know that it's mine. I know that it's mine. Lift your voice with me and say that it's mine. I know that it's mine. They all horrible blessing of his love divine. Yes, sir. Thank God he's mine.
Oh, yes, good night, everyone. Welcome to another Hopeful Wednesday. Now, it has been long, because of the internet, I was not able to carry on our Hopeful Wednesday night for 2 Wednesdays or so. But God thanks that the internet is running again, and I give God thanks that He is allowing us to share the word of tonight on Hopeful Wednesday tonight. I want to welcome Melissa, Cleopatra, Roisin Bailey, and all the other 10 persons I'm not seeing on book, as well as Dion Williams, among the others I'm not seeing, but I know on. Welcome to you on this our Hopeful Wednesday tonight. And as the song says, every promise in the book. And so we need to claim those promises because they are promises of all of us. And so I know, as the song is, I want to say to us that we, many persons ask to us, but have they kept those promises? No, they are not reliable. But we know that there's a God who can keep our promises, His promises to us. And so many times we hear our friends make promises to us, but able to keep them. And so tonight I want us to reflect on God's promises, and I want to start by asking 2 questions. And first, I want to ask, has the world delivered on its promises? Has the world delivered on their promises to the people they are called to serve? Has the boss delivered their promises to the persons who are working for them? How hopeful were the employees when they were told that their jobs were permanent and secured? We live that cannot guarantee hope. And persons thought that they would have their jobs before COVID strike, but a lot of persons lost their job when this pandemic came about. They didn't know that this job. They were promised that they would have a job, a permanent job, but when COVID changed all that. And so, as we are here tonight, promises of the world become null and void when crisis or difficulty struck. So many financial make promises or give life insurance, but when the pandemic, they are not able to carry out their promises. But I want to say to us that we serve a God, even when pandemic strikes, His promises will be fulfilled. His promises will be delivered, because there is nothing in this world that can stop God from delivering His promises, and nothing that occurs around us that can tell the Lord that He cannot fulfill His promises. No, the world cannot guarantee us promises. They cannot. Promises from the world are a comfort to a fool. And so I want to focus on the promises of God tonight. The promises of God are for us to claim and inherit them. We can use the promises of God to fight the enemy. We can God to paralyze fear and have hope. God has promised us, and as a result, we can count on it no matter the circumstances or how long the wait. God will always go on his. And so tonight, for those of us who are on Facebook and YouTube, let us be hopeful, because just what happened is because of God's promise a couple years ago when he said he's going to send you, and now his promise were fulfilled, and we are here up to this time because it's of God's promise why we are here. God really didn't only say that he was going to send a son, but his son really came. And so from that, say that God not about keeping promises and keeping God, And so tonight I want us to look at a couple of things about promises. And so I want us to examine promises of hope in the midst of challenges, pandemic, storms, no matter the category it is. God's promises of hope is sure and certain. I want you to think of God's promise as a promissory note written to us. A promissory note is a written assurance. In other words, God has written us a check that we can bring to his spiritual bank to cash. And so when you think about God's promises, it falls into two categories, hopefully two categories. One, God's promises can be unconditional and it can be conditional. So we have unconditional promises from God and we have conditional promises from God. Tonight I want us to examine just the unconditional promises, the unconditional ones. And you may ask, what do I mean by unconditional promises of God? Now, when you look at unconditional, the word unconditional means conditional promise. It means that is the one that God offers and guarantees without any ifs included. So in other words, God grant our promises things without the in the picture. Nothing is attached to such a promise. And so God freely offers his promise to us. If you say, Lord, if you do this, I'm not going to get this, because when you talk about unconditional promise, there are no ifs to it. Those promises are freely given to us whether we deserve it. And so we want to look at a few of these promises that God has placed in our life, in his word. There are so many, but I'm just going to look at a few of them tonight. And so first I want to look at the first one is God to be with us. Yes, God promised to be with us, and that is a promise that there's no ifs. And I like something for God to be with us. It is a promise that God is giving to us without any act. And so Psalm 34:18 tells us, the Lord to the brokenhearted, and he saved those who are crushed in spirit, And he in verse 5 tells us also that God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. When you look at those two scriptures, you can see that God promised to be close to us. He promised to be with us. He promised not to leave us. And so in the midst of any situation, we can have hope that God will never leave us. He will be with us. So many of us are broken within and are crushed by various circumstances that affect us in our lives. Tribulation, sad death, storms, and this world is we see around us, and we encourage today basis. Some person might have gone through more than others, but every day somebody has experienced some form of trials, some form of sadness, some form of circumstances that is beyond their control, form of broken. But even though we are going through all of these, we are, because God promise says that he's going to be with us. He will never leave us. And so if you are crushed in your spirit, broke, you are sad, you are troubled, bear this in mind. God is with us. and is not going to, and there's no ifs attached to it. So you don't have to be, you have to do something for God to be you. He said he's going to be with us. He will never leave us now. For says one of God that he has given to us, And so the Bible, God was there for the Israelites in their brokenness and when they were crushing spirit, when they were going through the affliction in Egypt. With Daniel, when he was in the lion's den, God was there with the 3 Hebrews in the fiery furnace. And God will be there for all of us. And if you look at the Bible also, the Israelites had been through a lot of problems. They have been disobedient to God, but God was still with them because he promised to be with them. And he promised it throughout from Egypt. And he was every step of the way, even though they turned their back on him, even though they disobeyed him, even though they give Moses a difficult time. God, and when you look at us today, we sometimes give God a hard time. We sometimes disobey God, but yes, God is over us. He's still with us, no matter what we may be. Even when we are sleeping, God is watching every night, every hour, every minute, every second over our lives. And so there are no here in these promises, but God has was his total presence to be all the way through thick and thin. No, the world can't see that. Cannot. When we are going through thick times and difficult, our friends are not with us. But I can tell you, when you are going through your thickest of times, you can rest assured that God will be with you, no matter what the situation is. If you feel God is not here with you, you need to agree with, and you need to conquer with this song that of in the psalm who tells us in the last verse, and I quote, "Hear, my precious child, I love you, and I will never leave you. Never ever during your trials and testing, when you saw one set of footprints, it was then that I was carrying you. So feel that God with you is with you. You might not see the footprints of God with you, but what someone along the way, he's going to carry you. He's going to lift you up. He's going to take you. So you might not see his footprint beside you, but he's with you because he's not going to leave you. He's not a fool. And so when he says he's going to be with you, he will be with you. There were different circumstances for different persons in the Bible, but God was there for them. I believe David in Psalm 23 felt the presence of the Lord when he, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. If you have broken and crushed in your spirit, God promised to heal the brokenhearted, and he has delivered time and time again, and he will continue to deliver on his promises. In Luke 4 verse 18, Jesus said, "The Spirit is upon me." Why? Because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He had sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to captives and recovering the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. That is the God. That's the God whose promises are sure and true. Jesus himself tells us why he was here, and he still set people who are captive at liberty. He still those who are brokenhearted. He still restored the blind, spiritually blind, physically blind. He's still doing that. And if you look in your life, God there for us, for you in your life. He was there with those persons back then, and he's still here with us now. So don't you lose hope, don't have doubt that with you. God is with us. And sometimes you feel that God is not with you, is because the ones who have stepped away from God's presence. But I can tell you something, that God is with us. They express God's presence with him in his time. God was there with David David when he was fighting Goliath. God was there with the three Hebrew boys as well, and Daniel, and we could go on and go on. God promises is sure and they are true, and that is one of God's unconditional promises. You don't have to have, you only have to be a if to those promises that God gives us. God has a promise to be our guide and to guide us. Only to guide, not only to be our guide, but to guide us. So He promised to guide us. And so there's in that as well. You know, when you look at Psalm 30, verse 8, He says, I will instruct you and the way you should go. I will look my loving eye on you. What a God. You know, you and I don't need to worry about which way to go, because God is here to guide a bright future. Life is a lot of pathways, and some of us we are is on our own, and we don't want to be on that path with us. But even though we may want to go, God will be our guide. He wants to guide us on a path that He knows best. Sometimes we allow self to guide, and self cannot lead onto a bright path, onto a bright future. God can. Sometimes the challenge is make at a dead end, you know, and we don't see the way out. We allow God to lead us, then He's going to lead us away from dead ends. You know, He knows the right way. He knows it, and His guidance will take us onto a path, the right path, the right path to a happy and better life, the right path to salvation, the right everlasting life, the right path to our eternal home in glory, and to lead us to home, because we can't make it on our own. We don't know the way home, but God knows it. And as Jesus says, the way, the truth, and the life, no man cometh to the Father but by through me. So in other words, God is the way for us, and so He's the only one who can. My hope for the family. So God will lead us through darkest times. God will guide us through the storms of life. This is unconditional. God is here to be with us, and God is here to be our guide. He is the way maker, the lightness to guide us through this life. And I want us to be blessed with the verse and the chorus of this song, Maker by Shinak. So Matthew will play that for us. Just the first verse and the chorus, my brothers and sisters.
I worship you. I worship you. You are here working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Hey, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you.
Amen. God is touching every heart. God is here in every heart. Here, touch heart. God is here. God is here. He is the God. So if you have not experienced what God is doing, you need to get it. Because God is the way maker here. He's here touching every heart. Hearts are sad. Hearts that are broken. Hearts that are troubled. God's promises are sure and are certain. He is here as a song. He is the way. So we and I don't have to worry about the future because God is going to guide us to a better future. And this, my brothers and sisters, this, my brothers and sisters, is hope. This should give us hope. So we may be going through a dark tunnel, but guess what happened? And you will see that light at the end of the tunnel because guess what happened? God's going to take us out of that dark tunnel into a brighter path in the future where there's hope. Light is hope. And if God says He's here, He's here. If God's going to be the way for us, He's going to be that. So if you have anybody who don't know how they're going to go through like this darkest time, then you need to let them know the way maker because He's here to through our darkest time. Now, unconditional promise of God is that God promises hope. Yes, God promises hope. So we have looked at here. He's not going to leave us. We have looked at He's going to guide us and be the guide. No, He promises hope. Hope that is needed in this world right now. No, Jeremiah 29 verse 11 tells us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm. Plan to give you a hope and a future." It cannot give us hope. The world cannot protect us. It just cannot protect us. But know that our God says that He promised to prosper us. He promised not for us to be harmed. He promised to give us a hope and a future. In this God, we can see that this promise that God has, that the future is bright and clear for all of us. And there is ifs in this promise. There's no if attached to this. In this uncertainty we are living in, hope, and God promises hope. With God, you will have a future. With God, you will have prosperity. I cannot guarantee us prosperity. What we see in this world is oppression, suffering, strife. I hope we went to family. Sometimes the enemy tries to destroy our hope and our plans to prosper. But when God promises you a hope, when God promises you a future, when God promises you the prosperity, He will deliver. He will deliver. God had a plan. God had plans for Joseph the dreamer. He had plans for Joseph the dreamer. Joseph faced oppositions from his family. They didn't believe that what he was dreaming would do. When what happened, God's promise for Joseph was a matter of time to be fulfilled. He moved Joseph He moved him from becoming a prisoner in Egypt to a governor in Egypt. I don't know where you are, but God can move you from where you are, what people think you are not, and He can move you to a place where you can become someone. He can move you to a place where you can become someone special, someone important. So many persons write you off. Look on you like you don't exist, like you don't have a hope, you have a purpose. But let me tell you something. Whatever which are in, God can move you to a state where people you don't exist to a state where you do exist. He can move you from a place where you think that you don't, a place where you belong. He moved Joseph, and he can move you. And when God promised you to move you, when God promised to deliver you, he will deliver you. Joseph had to work in Egypt, create prosperity throughout the years of famine. And that, my friends, is of hope. So it may be it may be long, but there's prosperity at the end of the process. There is prosperity. You will have difficulty, have troubles, yes. You will have circumstances, yes. But when God promises you hope, He's going to take you through those difficult times. And at the end of it, He prosperity. Joseph experienced prosperity, not only for Egypt, but for as well. And so, let us be hopeful. Let us be hopeful. Now, another promise that God made to us that is unconditional is God promised to provide. Philippians 4 verse 9 says, and my God will meet all your needs according to your rich in glory. Yes. 2 Corinthians 9 verse, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. God has promised to be our main provider. God promised a safe light and hope, and He delivered. It's because of God's promise where we are in the land of the living. God provided manna for the children of Israel on their journey from Egypt. God provided for the woman of Zarephath, according to 1 Kings 17 verse 16. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. God not only provided for us physically, but He provided for us spiritually and emotionally. God not only promised us hope, but He promised us provisions. And that gives us. You and I can rely on God for us. When you say about God, promises are fulfilling, and that is impossible with God. God will lead us into impossibility, but God will lead us into possibilities. For His and nothing is impossible for Him to promise. Nothing is possible to promise and to deliver. Nothing is impossible for God. Nothing is impossible. If you are here tonight, not seeing God, or you don't know what it's like to experience God's promises, tonight could be a night for you, And for those of us who know God, let us continue to hold on, because He will deliver, and nothing is impossible with Him. So I want us to be blessed with a verse and a chorus of this song. Nothing is impossible by Sheena. All right. So there's a chorus and a verse of this song. Nothing is impossible.
Your word I stand and I testify. You are able. How many of you believe that? That God is able. Our God is able. By your word, Lord, I stand and I testify that you are able, exceeding abundantly, much more than I can ever think, exceeding abundantly, you are able to do all sufficient God. Yeah. You are able, come on. You are able. Wave your hands to Jesus, say you are able, come on. You are by your word, by your word, I stand and I testify. You are. How many of you can testify?
Amen. By God's word, He is able. By God's word, we can stand on God's word that He is able. He is able, my brothers. Nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is. And so, really, I want us to look at the final promise for tonight. God promises strength and protection. So this comes to us from 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 3. But the Lord is faithful, and He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. Isaiah verse 2 says, when you pass through the rivers, I'll be with you. When the rivers sweep over you, walk to the fire, you will not be burned. They set you ablaze. And when you look at those two verses, my brothers and sisters, God is able. God is able to protect. God is able to give us strength, through our difficult times. So God has promised us strength and to protect, no matter how difficult things may seem. Right now, people may be weak because of what they are going through, but God provides us with strength and protection. God has extended promises, strength, and protection to us. He protected Daniel in the lion's den. He protected Silas in prison. He protected 3 Hebrew boys. He protected David from Goliath. He protected the children of Israel from Egyptians. And we could go on. And if you look in your life, God will have protected you from something point in your life. And God's still doing that, because every day we have to seek God for His protection, because anything can happen to us. And so we cannot go through the world or through the day without God's protection or God's strength. We need God's strength to take us through the day. We need God's strength every day. And the joy of with strength in the Lord. We can find strength in when you and I are going through our storms or rushing rivers or fires, time and time again, the Lord, you are not harmed. Remember what God says: when you are passed through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you are walking through the flames, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. What a mighty God we serve. Have you been through a storm? Have you been through a crisis? Have you been through a tribulation? And at the end of the day, were you still weak? No, I don't think so. I don't believe so. We were not weak. Because at the end of the storm, at the end of the tribulation, we are strong. We are strong because of it all, our faith increased. Our faith increased. Every trial that we go through, every street we go through, we are stronger than what we were. Out of this, when we think about these things, whatever we are going through, God is working it out on good. So don't you think that when you go through, you are going to be weak. God is going to make you strong. God continues to protect us and to give us strength each day. God protects when we cannot see danger that lurks in our way. What will happen if we didn't have God? If that hasn't been for God. We serve a covenant-keeping God who can never change. He will walk beside us, and that is all that matters. Once we have God, we don't need to worry about it because all that matters is that God is there. All that matters promises us hope. All that matters that God is strength. All that matters that God is going to be there to protect us. And no matter what we face around us, God is going to be there for us. When you look at the Bible, those disciples, they were in and around the ship, and they were so terrified. But guess what? Even in the midst, they were terrified. But guess what? When Jesus said, "Peace be still," and everything that around them was calmed. There was that teacher was in the boat with his disciples, and Jesus was coming, and he asked if he could come, and he was on his way there, and because his eye was on Jesus, but when he took his eyes off him, then everything to fall apart. But you and I, when we have our eyes on God, when we focus on God, when we hold on to what God promises are, then we can be sure that our fears will not be there, because when you have God with us, you don't see fears, but what you see is hope. And so God was there with these persons in the Bible, and he protected them and he gave them strength. And God can give us strength. God can give us strength to fight our battles in whatever we are going through, and God can protect us. And so tonight, as we go off, I want us to go off with the assurance that God continues to offer his unconditionals to us without the big ifs. And we can have hope knowing that continues to keep these promises. Hold on to his promises, my brothers, my Hope Wednesday family. Hold on to his promises are certain and they are true. He will not forsake you. Your anchor. He is your in the midst of any difficult situation or storms. His promise will enable us to be strong, to fight the enemy, to battle those financial struggles that we go through and the waves that surround us. Tonight I leave a thought with you. And the thought is God's promise are like the star. The darker the night, the brighter they shine. Let me repeat it. God's promises are like the stars. The darker the night, the brighter they shine. The God we serve, when your night is dark, His are going to be bright enough to lead you out of those darkest times. As you go through this week, rest assured in God's unconditional promises. I thank you for joining us tonight, and for me as I share with you God's promises. And so again we will touch the conditional promises. So tonight we looked at promises of God. We're going to talk about the conditional ones when we meet again. But I want to thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope and trust that as you go through tonight, remember some of these promises. Claim them, my brothers and sisters, going through a difficult time. Don't just allow the struggles and the trials to overburden you. They are here to lift up. Claim them. They are there for us. And if in these unconditional promises, he didn't say that you have to do this to get this. And so when you talk about the unconditional promises, yes, but when you talk promises, then we're going to talk about the ifs. So as you go through tonight, remember, God's promises are like the stars. The darker the night, the brighter they shine. And so I want to thank you for it and for playing this song for all of us to hear what God's promises are tonight. And I pray that the Lord will bless him as he continues to carry out his duty in this capacity. As we go tonight, I want to leave you with this song by Victoria Orenze, which says, Covenant Keeping God. So as you go tonight, remember, we serve a covenant keeping God. Keep his covenant. The world does not fail. So be blessed as you listen to this song. And so when we meet again, we'll pick up on God's promises of hope, and we're looking at the conditional aspect of it. I will be blessed. And thank you very much for joining me tonight. I hope you are blessed. And let others to join us next week, same time. Matthew, take us out with Covenant Keeping God by Victoria Orenze.
The covenant keeping God. You are the covenant keeping God. Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. You never leave me. You said that you won't forsake me. You walk beside me, and that is all that matters. You never leave me. You said that you won't forsake me. You walk beside me, and that is all that matters. The sun will smite me, and the moon it will not hurt me. The flood will sweep me. The Lord is my anchor. The sun will smite me, and the moon it will not hurt me. The flood will sweep me. The Lord is my anchor. You are the covenant keeping God. You are the covenant keeping God. Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. Sing you are the covenant keeping God. Only you are the covenant keeping God. Hey, Yahweh, Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. Yahweh, the covenant keeping God. He'll never leave you. He said that he will forsake you. He will walk beside you, and that is all that matters. The sun will smite you, and the moon it will not hurt you. The flood will sweep you. The Lord is your anchor. Psalm 91 says, the sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. He will give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They will bear you up in their hands. You will not dash your foot against a stone. With long life, he will satisfy you. So it's the word of the Lord we are singing. The sun will smite you, and the moon, it will not hurt you. The flood will sweep you. The Lord is your anchor. You are the covenant keeper. Sing you
and his part. You can't keep yours. He will help you keep your part and keep his part, because he is God and he is just. You are the covenant. You